Hmm. Well, more bad arguments. Here we go. All right, deconverted man here. Creation Questions has a video called God Exists, Convince Me Otherwise. Because the burden of proof can be switched, I guess. God doesn't exist, convince me otherwise. So, what do you mean by God would be a good place to start. And more importantly, how do you know that that God is a thing in the first place? But he doesn't start there. No. He starts with the fan favorite Kalam cosmological crap argument. But he also mentions two fiends of the theist persuasion whose books he loves, Frank Turek and J. Warner Wallace. Giant frauds who pretend to know what the hell they're talking about when they don't. But this is the sort of thing that some people buy into because, I don't know, reasons. And I strongly suspect that this young man hasn't learned informal logic or any science, it doesn't seem like, or what science he did learn, he's set aside because in this comment section, it seems like he doesn't agree with biological evolution because, of course not. Why would you agree with one of the most well-supported sciences that there is? Because he just, he doesn't like it, I guess. He's got the creationist ideas about it or something, what did he say here? What's your view on evolution? Somebody asked. And then he said that I don't believe that evolutionary mechanisms can explain the origin of novel body plans, and I don't accept common ancestry. The reason stem from the sticky globule problem, the waiting time problem, Hadeline's dilemma, Mueller's ratchet, genetic entropy, and the search space problem. Whatever the fuck any of that is, that's not my field. Answers and atheism will have to deal with them, I guess. But what I do recognize is I don't agree with science. That part I do recognize. Because he thinks that, they got it wrong somehow. And I'm guessing that those words come from creationist websites. I don't know. I'm not here to talk about evolution. No. I'm just saying that, we know where he's coming from, at least at that level. So it's not a surprise or a shock to see that he has crap arguments for God. It's just, I don't know. I guess I just really wanted to point it out to Wes here from Creation Questions. So this is the crappy Kalam that states everything begins to exist as a cause. The universe began to exist before the universe had a cause, and he puts in parentheses God. Even William Lane Craig will tell you that the Kalam isn't supposed to be about proving God. That you need other arguments besides the Kalam to get to God. But, sure, why not? I have a video, KCA deals with all the fallacies of the Kalam, but I don't need it anymore. I don't need the fallacies. Planck's temperature boils it away. So if Big Bang cosmology is correct, then Planck temperature was a thing and the Kalam fails. The end. And if the Big Bang isn't a thing, then the Kalam fails. Either way, the Kalam fails. So I don't need to spend any more time on that. But before I go on, just a moment about this prove that there's no holy shit. Oh. Yeah! yes, it is insane how far, utterly ludicrous far, many people will go to statistically deny evolutionary theory as part of their dogmatism. Holy shit. Yeah, yeah, that guy's excited there. Mr. Magnificent's really, he's happy to be here. So, and Math Streak is also running naked through chat. Oh. Oh. Anyways, but the moment here about the prove not God thing. And I just want to speak about that for a moment. And then I'll get back to the video. I know I haven't played any of the video, but hey, look, it's my channel. I get to do what I want. Okay. See, okay. I'm a skeptic and an atheist and agnostic and atheist and whatever other labels you want to throw at me. Asshole. Hey, what? Who said asshole? You're fired. Okay, anyways. But whatever. I don't believe in God, whatever that is. I don't even know. So my goal is not to say there's no God. I don't know if there isn't. That really just depends on what you say God is. Then I can tell you whether it isn't or not. So a God that requires you to deny evolution, for example, is a God that doesn't exist. Because or is a lying God, a liar, So a God belief that requires you to say that evolution is false is one that doesn't and cannot exist in reality because evolution is true. It's like if there's a God that 1 + 1 is a billion, that God cannot exist for real. So if you tie your idea of God into something that isn't real, then that God cannot be real, period. But if your concept of God is more flexible and allows you to accept biological evolution without any problems, then that God is at least plausibly real because it's not denying anything about reality as we understand it. But then you need to still demonstrate that it is real. And if you cannot or will not demonstrate that God is a thing, then you shouldn't believe in it, nor should anybody else. That doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't any. It just means we don't believe in it anymore. And there's this little tiny difference. But really it gets to the point of like, well, what even is God? Because I don't know. And you can say, well, I know what God is. No, you know what you believe about God. But you don't know that that really is God. You just really believe that that's God. And I'm not here to tell you that there's no God. I'm just here to tell you, hey, your arguments suck. Get better arguments. Your arguments are broken. Here's why. Fix them. And then you don't fix them because apologists never seem to be willing to fix these broken arguments. And I don't know why. And I tell apologists, I'm like, hey, have you learned informal logic? Never get a response to that. No clear yes, I have. Or no, I haven't. Always like, well, I looked at logic once, or I studied formal logic. I dealt with a guy that did that ages back. Some guy had studied formal logic. I'm like, okay. And he's like, my argument's valid. My argument's valid. I'm like, who the freaking bleep cares that your argument's valid? It's not sound. And that's the main point. And it was like, oh, and he didn't get it. And I'm like, maybe you need to look at informal logic because you're stuck in the formal mindset that can deal with the abstract things very well, but it can't deal with the normal usage that we have in ordinary day language. That's what informal logic focuses on. So it's useful in this degree, but not useful in the degree that you need it to be. So anyways, so the Kalam has logical fallacies. The compositional fallacy is one of them. But like I said, don't even need that for the Kalam because Planck temperature burns away the Kalam completely. So the Planck temperature, just so this guy knows, even though most of my viewers have heard me say it before, I have to say it again every time because this is aimed at Wes here from Creation Questions. Whether or not Wes will pay attention to me, I don't know, but it's aimed at him at any rate. Is that Planck temperature? So if the Big Bang cosmology is correct, which I mean, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's up to cosmologists to figure out. Some of them think it is, some of them don't. But anyways, if it is, then the universe, as we go backwards in time, gets smaller and smaller until it's a really tiny little speck. But at some point, and I'm not sure when in that timeline, as it gets small, it gets really, really hot. And it gets into what's called the Planck temperature, which is like the hottest that things can be, period. Because there aren't any things anymore, because it's so hot that atoms can't form. So cause and effect just kind of goes out the window in that sort of universe, because we don't know what that is like when the universe is that hot and there is no physics to speak of because there's no molecules. It's kind of hard to tell. I don't know what's going on in that universe, and you don't know either. And we can't just say, well, but all these rules we're so used to, once that cools down, we get rules that we're used to, after some period of time, maybe. But okay, cool. But that doesn't mean that those rules apply to this hot universe. And so when we hit this, I don't know, the only honest thing to do would be to discard the Kalam in full. It's a bad argument. Okay. So, no to this. What else? He says stuff about it. But then he goes to the fine-tuning argument. Okay, well, we're gonna read it before I talk about it. Okay. We should not claim there is no God. For them, God's a placeholder, not a sentient being. I mean, I don't know. Depends. Different people have different ideas of what God is. I don't tell them what their idea of God is. That's up to them to tell me what God is. But I don't claim that there's no God. I claim that, if I'm going to make any claim, it would be that I don't know what God is and I don't believe in it. And I don't know of any good sound argument for God, nor empirical evidence or repeatable tests for God. So I don't believe in it for those reasons. Anyways, okay. So fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. So this is a trichotomy, is the formal phrase of this. So could it be something not on this list? So could it be something that's not physically necessity, chance, or design? Some other option? Sure, it could be. And you might say, well, what is that other option? And honestly, it's not up to the person saying that there could be another option to give another option. And I know that's weird to wrap your head around. I've had people just say, no, you have to give me the thing to show me that. No, that there is a possibility that there's another option means that you haven't sufficiently sealed this off from being a potential false trichotomy. But if you really want one, magic. It was magic, but it wasn't designed, but it was magic. So there's a fourth option that you're excluding. So then, therefore, it's a false trichotomy. It's not due to physical necessity or chance, which you cannot just rule those out with a syllogism. You would need actual science for that. And then you say, therefore, it is due to design. And then you say, God. Well, of course, design doesn't necessarily imply God per se, but you haven't proven it because you need to support that second. Well, you need to support second premise, which you haven't done, and And the first premise already is a false trichotomy anyways. So that's it. You're done. But this fine tuning. So this all assumes that fine tuning is a thing in the first place. Well, is it? I don't know. And I don't think that you know either. Have you read the scientific papers on fine tuning? I don't think so. I think what you have done is taken these arguments from apologetic websites and or books and said, these arguments sound good to me, so I'm going to put them up for people and this is going to convince them. But no, it's not convincing. The so-called fine tunings of the universe aren't really as extreme as you might think they are. Some of them are wide margins that they could be different. So we're talking about gravity. So if the force of gravity was greater than it is or less than it is, then life would be different. But there would still be life, it would just be different. But if you go way up or way down, then life might not be possible at all. But can we really say life would be impossible? Well, not necessarily. You might say, well, physics as we understand it would collapse because if gravity was too strong, if things were squishing together all the time, then you wouldn't have this universe at all. So you wouldn't have anything. Well, you might. I don't know. You might have something else. I don't know. Have you done the modeling on that universe? Have you made a mathematical model about that? Or have you done some sort of simulation in a computer? If not, then what are you basing that it cannot produce life on? And why is it life that you're hung up on? Because usually when they talk about fine tuning, the apologists, they focus on life as being this extraordinary magical event, like the universe was building up towards life. But no, life is designed not at all. It is formed in a universe where it can happen, and it is only in a very small part of the universe where the conditions are allow for it to happen. It's not like the universe is teeming with life. So if the universe was so fine-tuned for life, why wouldn't it be life everywhere and not just on one tiny planet? So, and also you have the millions of years of the universe existing before life. So the universe was designed for life, but there wasn't life for a long, long time. In fact, there wasn't even a planet Earth for a long, long time. You got about 9 billion years of universe time before the Earth shows up. So what was going on in all that time? It was just waiting for life to show up. It just doesn't work, and it's not really scientific, but it sounds like it is. It just says, well, the probability that it would be different is, and then they make up a bunch of numbers that don't mean anything. And the real core is that there isn't, that I'm aware of, any actual model to show us what a different universe would be like. So we can't really say that the probability is anything in the first place because we only have one example of a universe. It would be far more impressive to find ourselves in a universe that didn't support life. That would be a better argument for God, because that would be inexplainable under natural conditions. But as far as it not being due to chance, well, I always notice with creationists, they leave the filtering mechanism of death out. So there's a filtering mechanism of death just on a stellar level when it comes to cosmology of stars dying. So could it be that when the universe forms, there's death that happens? So some universes are really heavy and collapse back in on themselves and die, so they don't become a universe. And other universes have way too little gravity, so they go wee and nothing really happens there. And then you have some universes that don't. You might say, wait a minute, but where are these universes coming from? I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if we're going to go down the track of talking about fine tuning as if it's been dialed in just for life, when it's the other way around. Life has arisen in a place where it can arise, and we aren't surprised to find ourselves here. Because if we weren't here, we wouldn't know that we weren't. So it's kind of like, and I really go, look, to get a little bit graphic, not too much, you and I, human beings, we're all the result of sperm and eggs, and one egg. But it could have been some other egg at a different time, and there's, I don't know how many zillions of sperm that men produce during ejaculation, but any of those sperm could have made it to the egg, but you made it. Now, the likelihood that you made it is 1 in whatever the bleep the number is. So therefore, God made you, and you weren't born. Well, wait a minute, that doesn't follow. You were born. Well, but God picked the sperm that would go into the egg. Why? Really? Did God he's like, that one, that's the sperm I want? Or did God just let it happen? How much is God involved in deciding which sperm and egg get combined or not? Does God leave that to chance, or is God involved? Because is it then after the egg and sperm meet, then a soul or spirit is assigned to that entity and body? How does that work? Anyways, getting too far off topic. So I don't think that fine tuning is what you think it is. Objection 1. Objection 2, this is potential false trichotomy. And objection 3, you have no support for premise 2. So that fails then. Okay, let's see. Okay. Red Bert is insane. Cool. We're just going to go ahead and get rid of that guy forever. And that will solve that little problem. Anyways, all right. Not dealing with that. All right, so the fine-tuning argument doesn't work. All right, what else do you have? And this is an hour video. That's why I'm not playing. I'm just going through these things. Moral argument. If objective moral values exist, an objective lawgiver must exist. Objective morals exist, therefore objective moral lawgiver exists that you're calling God. Well, this is a hypothetical, so at least you got that, formatted correctly. But the objective lawgiver could very well be humans, or a human that says, here, I have studied humanity and come to the conclusion that these morals are correct in some way, shape, or form. But what makes a moral objective? And this gets into muddy ground. And it's weird that they always go after morals and not ethics, because to me, you're not talking about anything unless you're talking about ethics. Ethics is the system that you select that then determines how your morals kind of aim for different goals in that ethical system, broadly speaking. Although we don't really think this deeply when we're in the moment necessarily, but whatever. Okay, so there's the ethical system of utilitarianism, the most good for the most amount of people, the least harm for the least amount of people. And you'd see this in action with the train trolley dilemma, where there's one track is one person, and if you switch it, it's going to hit 5 people unless you switch the track, and then it will hit 1 person. So most people say they'd hit 1 person instead of 5 because it's less people. And and then it gets more complicated. You have a fat person on a bridge that you push over in front of the train to stop it, and yada yada yada. So it gets tricky, right? And it would be nice if we had a clear, cut and dry, this is the way to do things every time, no matter what. But life is messy. So it seems that your morals have to steer around these obstacles that you have in order to get to the ethical goal that you have in mind. So if your ethical goal is to benefit other humans, you might not know how to get to that goal, but you definitely know how to not get to that goal. You know that when you're driving, a bad idea would be to close your eyes, because that's going to cause some problems. So at some point, you're going to hit somebody or something, and you're going to cause injury or death to yourself and or others. So that's not good. So you don't do that because hey, my ethics system says I want an outcome of benefiting humans. So I don't know what that is, but I do know what not to do. I'm not going to close my eyes while I'm driving. I'm not going to drink alcohol and drive. I'm not going to smoke weed or do whatever other drugs and drive. I'm going to be sober, awake, alert, and being the best driver I know how to be while I drive, and try to drive safely, and that way I reduce harm. And and I'm gonna try to feeding people, that's good. So maybe I'll open a restaurant. Okay, well, what kind of food do I want to serve people? I don't want to serve them fatty food because that's bad for humanity. So I'll serve them vegetarian cuisine, or whatever, So you then, in that sense, then is your moral objective because it's aiming to a goal? Well, maybe, depending on how you look at it. Or is it still ultimately subjective because, well, how you get to the goal changes depending on the day and the situation. And also the selection of the ethical system, too, is ultimately subjective because you selected it. So you right now, the Christian theist, whatever this person is, I don't know if he's a Christian. I don't know. I'm assuming, but I could be wrong about that. Has divine command theory as their system. They think that God has ordained certain things to be correct and certain things to be incorrect. And there's a list, the 613 laws in the Judeo-Christian list, which either are all on or don't matter at all. And the only law that does matter is, do people like you would like them to do you, or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, it doesn't matter. What matters is they think that this entity has said these are the rules. But you need to demonstrate that that's true. Just saying that it's true doesn't make it true. Now, typically what happens is they say, well, if objective morals don't exist, then X is true and X is something bad. And it's like, well, that's an appeal to consequence. You need to demonstrate that objective ethics exist. And then you can say your morals may or may not be subjective to those ethics. Who cares? And then establishing ethics as objective is huge, but that still doesn't prove God, because you'd have to show that God is the source of those ethics and or morals. Just saying that they're objective doesn't mean that they're necessarily from God, because we could very well, as humans, figure out the best way to treat other humans and say, hey, we figured it out. This is the best way to treat each other in X, Y, and Z circumstance. And we could maybe have a huge list of that. Like, oh, this is situation 17.A. I should not flirt with Robin under these conditions because it would be inappropriate. But 17B, then it's fine to flirt with Robin under these conditions. And that'd be a great list to have, but it'd be hell to work through. But then, of course, we're going to use AI because we're lazy and be like, hey, am I allowed to do this? And AI will be like, yeah, you're allowed to do that. Yeah. So then they could be objective, and humanity made it or figured it out. So you wouldn't need God there either. But God being the source of morals and or ethics doesn't make them objective necessarily either, because it could change its mind for all you know. So that then you're right back to square one. It doesn't prove God no matter how you try to fit this square hole in a circle peg. I honestly think that the whole objective moral argument is presupposition with extra steps. Basically, it's an effort from the apologist to say, without God, you can't say things are good or bad. Therefore, there's God, because you want God to be, if you want to call God bad, you can't do that unless God exists. Ha ha ha. And I'm like, no, there is a bad, and your God definitely is bad. Because, like, look at the 613 laws. Most of them end in stoning to death, which is bad, because I consider bad to be something against humans being able to, live, So that's just me, though, But anyways, it's not a good argument. So because this is a bad argument, now what's the fallacy per se? Well, the fallacy here is simply the moral values and objective lawgiver existing that's not necessarily conjoined and argued for, so you're missing important premises. But it is a hypothetical syllogism, so we could say that this is a valid argument, and we could just say, I disagree with number one, and that's it, and say, well, that's not true to number one because it's hypothetical. But, so there's many ways you could object to it, but you haven't proven that number two is true. And you certainly haven't shown that the moral lawgiver is God. So this argument fails. Let's see, what else? And chat is going crazy over here. Let's see, even discounting human-derived objective systems, I've never seen the apologists show that only God can be a supernatural source of morals. Well, yeah, I mean, and set a God aside. I mean, why not aliens or a time traveler? Now, sure, why not? Let's go that route. So let's say that I at some point invent a time machine, and I come back in time to visit myself now. Damn it. One of these days. And I tell myself, hey, look, this is what you got to do. All right. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, why? Because I'm going to need, I don't know. And he's going to maybe, and he's like, well, I can't tell you it would cause a paradox, and that would like destroy time space. I'm like, well, wouldn't you being here already do that? And he's like, look, I gotta go. I don't have that much time. I'm like, but you have a time machine. You have all the time in the world. No, that's not how it works. I can't explain it. Poof, he disappears. I'm like, well, that's weird. But now I have a dilemma. Do I trust myself from the future and just do X, Y, and Z? Oh, depends what X, Y, and Z are. Like, if they're things that I don't mind doing or don't see any harm in doing, then I'll do them. But if they do seem bad to me, I won't do them because I didn't give myself sufficient reason to do them. So, of course, my future self's going to have to come back in time with a book explaining why I should do X, Y, and Z if he doesn't really have that much time to explain it verbally to me for whatever reason. Although that book might cause a paradox that destroys the very fabric of reality. But wouldn't him visiting me do that? And, okay, look. Point is, just because somebody that knows stuff, like your future self knows stuff, and you would trust yourself, you would think, but that doesn't mean that them telling you to do those things makes those things good to do. Even if they are, you don't know. You don't have enough information to go on. So God saying, do this, or aliens saying, do this, doesn't make that thing necessarily the right thing to do. Now, an example of blind obedience to God occurs, well, in the Judeo-Christian Bible. It's the only one I can reference. I don't know about other gods, so sorry. If you're some other religion other than Judeo-Christian, I don't know. You're going to have to tell me what religion that is. I'm going to have to look it up and find some weird, wacky stuff that God said. I don't know. But anyways, in the Judeo-Christian Bible, at any rate, God supposedly says to Abraham, kill your son. And Abraham's like, okay, and he goes to do it. Now, it doesn't matter that Abraham thinks that, like, well, it's fine. God, it's okay. God has some reason for this. That doesn't matter. What matters is Abraham was going to do it. It doesn't matter that God's like, just kidding, Abraham. You can kill this sheep instead. That doesn't matter either. What matters is Abraham obeyed God. And that's why God loves Abraham. I view that as an immoral story. Because in my version, God would tell Abraham, kill your son. Abraham would say, fuck you, God. I'm not going to do that. And God say, you passed my test. See, the true moral would be to say no to something you know is wrong. If murder is wrong, you can't command me to do something that's wrong, God. Unless you're saying that murder isn't wrong, or that killing isn't wrong, because it's only murder if it's illegal. And I guess if God's telling you to do it, it's not murder anymore. But no, I'm not going to kill my son just because you said to do it. Your power doesn't make you right. So what makes the moral right? Is it right on its own? Right, because God said it? It's a problem, right? Anyways, so that argument doesn't work. So the whole point of any of this is that these arguments don't work, and you need to get arguments that do work, okay? Which, I mean, I don't know if you have, but yeah. Intelligent design argument. Oh, God. No. No, I don't. No. No. No, I don't wanna. No. No. I don't wanna. What? Oh, okay. It's a nerf thing. Even if I did, it doesn't. Unless you do this, you pull that and then it shoots. And even if you did do that, it couldn't hurt you. If you shot it in your eye, you would hurt yourself. But don't aim real guns at anything you don't plan to destroy. Fake gun, just be careful. Anyways, in case YouTube was like, oh my God, he aimed a gun at his head. Anyways, all right. Intelligent design argument. This is going to fail no matter what it says. All systems which have form, function, and information require an intelligent designer. That's wrong. Okay. Premise 1 is wrong, just in reality. So, anyways, biological systems have. Oh, this is broken. This is compositional fallacy and equivocation. Therefore, they require intelligence. No. This is equivocation and compositional fallacies. And no, information doesn't require an intelligent designer, because what information is something that that kind of gets down into like information theory, which can get really complicated. I like to simple things down because I'm kind of dumb. So imagine, if you will, that we have a giant record player. Hopefully you can look up a record player, because kids these days don't know what the hell a record player is. But imagine you have a giant arm from that record player. There's a giant needle hanging down from that arm. And we run that needle across some sand dunes. Bump, music. Bump, music. Or, well, a sound at any rate. That's information. That's information. The dunes are contain information that the record player's needle is interpreting for us humans as sound. That's information. Those dunes were formed by wind. Now, since everything is designed to you, wind is God. So God's like, come on, sand dunes. Get in a nice little pattern for me, because he's waiting for us humans to invent the giant record player to play the sand dunes, because he's got a secret message hidden for us in the sand dunes. Haven't you looked at the pyramids? Whatever. So, I don't know why I'm even putting these on. I'm not even going to listen to the video anyways. Precept? Is it Precept? I don't know. Oh, that was the guy in the channel. I look 20 years younger without a beard. Oh! Woo! Woo! What happened to my beard? Oh! Yeah. Anyways, all right. Thank you, though. That's. So now I look 0 because I always looked 20 before, right? So now I look 0 years old if I look 20 years younger. Anyways, all right. So this fails. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Biological systems are a result of biological evolution, and he denies that. So I don't know how to fix that other than just to tell him it's wrong. But the information doesn't require an intelligent designer. But the problem there is with my analogy of the sand dunes, he's just going to say that the sand dune was put there by God, so that information was from the intelligent designer anyways. So there's no point I can ever show him information coming from a non-intelligent source, since everything comes from this intelligence. So he gotta, he's got to get away from intelligent design completely because it's pseudoscience, and learn, formal, informal logic and science, broadly speaking. It's biology, I guess, for evolution. But no to this argument. And we are the result of evolutionary forces working on us. We are apes. We are great apes, Yes, we are. And we're animals like every other animal. We're just, have this brain that other animals don't have, our kind of brain. Some might be smarter than us, but they don't have these, and these are really important to doing stuff. So we have certain things that enable us to be different than other creatures. But other creatures can do things better than we can. So it's kind of like, well, why these eyeballs? Why don't I have like 20 eyeballs? Like spiders have a bazillion eyeballs. Why can't I have a bazillion eyeballs? It would look weird. But it wouldn't look weird if we were always that way from the start. Then it wouldn't look weird, right? So, why design us this way? Why this shape? What's special about this shape? And then if you're going to say designed for what exactly? Because it has to be designed for something. Okay. So, what is it that I've been designed to do exactly? And without that, then this argument kind of falls apart too. And I've got gook in my eye. Don't you hate that? What is that called? Sleep or goo? Why do we call it sleep? It's just like, I don't know, it's dust and jelly that clogs up your eyeballs, gets in there. It's like, get out of there. So yeah, why does that happen? What kind of design was that? And why is my feeding hole also my breathing hole right next to each other with a tiny little flap? That's pretty bad design. So if I'm going to grant design, then your designer is dumb. And then it's not an intelligent designer. It's a dumb designer. Anyways, all right. But this is bad for all those reasons and more. And I'm going to send this to Answers in Atheism. He'll love it. Yeah, I better do that before I forget. Let's do that. MS Paint. All right, let's go ahead and do that now. Maybe not on screen so that you guys can see the email because I don't know the Answers in Atheism wants his email just out there in the public. That probably not, I would assume. Get back on my screen. I took a screenshot of you. Damn it. All right. Okay. All right. There. Now paste into Paint. Look, I can do this live. All right. I'll, fuck. Fine. We'll do it offline. Fine. All right. We're wasting time. We're wasting all the time. All right. I don't know. All right. Wow, he's talking about this one a while here. Whoa. Okay, intelligent design. What's next? Ontological. Oh God, no. Giant. The greatest pizza exists because I think it exists, so therefore the greatest pizza exists. This one's nothing burger. Just because something is great doesn't make it a thing. And this all relies on this idea that it's better to exist than not exist, so it has to exist for real. It's just bad. It's just bad. If it's possible to agree that the lobster original deity exists in some possible world, then the lobster original deity exists in every possible world, and blah blah blah, same thing. So it's just a nonsense thing. You can't define something into existence, or I would say, hey, if it's possible that I have $1 million, then I do have $1 million. Therefore, I have $1 million, and go to the bank. Hey, bank, I have $1 million. No, you don't, sir. But I mean, it's possible that I do. Therefore, I do. Anyway, so that doesn't work. What fallacies does that have? Oh boy. Well, I mean, this is hypothetical. It should just discount premise one. Greatest conceivable being would have to be shown to be a thing and not just a concept. So, saying that it is possible to exist needs an argument that you have not provided. So you'd have a formal fallacy here rather than informal. So the whole argument. A priori truths. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know that I'm familiar with this one. If a priori truths exist, they must exist in some mind. Well, that's not true. That's not what it... No. A priorities exist outside of all contingent minds, therefore a priori truth exists in non-contingent mind. Wow, that's... No. Wow. I'm gonna have to think about that one for fallacies, because that's just all sorts of wrong on formal levels and informal levels, and I really have to think about that one. That's a new one to me. Wow, that's broken. So that's like precept on maximum level. You're going for axioms at that point, which is what a priori is. You're going after tautologies. If I didn't hate it so much, I'd almost admire it. A priori truth exists as a concept, but also it's just true. So it doesn't exist other than as it is a reflection of reality, but it isn't like a thing. Like, you wouldn't say the number one exists out here, right? Exists in here, right? But the number one, it's a weird thing. It's an abstract. Like, what is it? What is the number one? It's not that. That's a finger, but that represents one, which represents a unit of a thing that has yet to be ascribed to it, but it doesn't exist except that we made it up. But there's still a single unit that does exist, even though there's nobody to call it a unit. So that's the same sort of thing as an a priori truth, which I don't know if that made any sense or not. Let me know in the comments if it did. So I'm sure I'm not explaining it well enough. I'm trying to think of a priori truth other than, laws of logic, maybe. No paradox allowed, maybe, as an a priori truth. Yeah, I mean, that'd be the only one I would think for sure has to be. But I'm not even sure about that one. I only say that it's a rule. It has to be a way. Has to be like the true fundamental nature of reality that no paradox allowed. That only because if paradox is allowed, then absurdity happens. So you know, uh, and well, if you have absurdity, then that leads to if it ever leads to a rule set, then paradox dies, and then it's not allowed anymore. But wow, wow, that's a new one, still broken, because a priori truths exist in the mind and are a reflection of the true nature of reality if they are indeed true, and whether they are or not would be a question. Uh, Anyways, all right. So, that's 19 minutes 36 seconds. So if somebody wants more from this guy, let me know and I'll do part two. But I'm getting kind of tired because I already did a live stream. My voice is running out. I got to think about this one. Honestly, that is so many problems in that. But yeah, so let me know what you think in the comments. Did I miss anything? Did I explain stuff not well enough for you? Um, how cute is Robin? Let me know in the comments. I mean, whatever. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here because I need your interaction. I thrive on it. I don't ask for money. I ask for comments. And so that's what I value. I value you as a person, your time, your energy. So let me know your thoughts. Agree, disagree, other. And if they won't fit in a comment or you would rather email me, hey, email me, deaconfordman1@gmail.com, and we'll talk there. We'll set up to do a talk live on my channel, whatever. All right. Until next time, well, all these arguments sucked. They're all full of fallacies of some sort, even though I couldn't name them off the top of my head in many cases. A couple of them were just hypothetical, so we can just throw those out anyways. But in most of the cases, they fail for logical and or scientific reasons. And because they fail on those levels, we have to be skeptical of the conclusion. And we're not offered any empirical evidence or repeatable tests. So that's a problem too. Until next time, you should probably be skeptical because after next time, I will be a lobster. Wait, what?